Welcome to the Vision Driven Basketball Training Podcast. Appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in today. If you guys are on Apple Podcast, make sure you guys scroll down to the bottom of the page and leave a review for me. Let you know what you think of the show. Really do appreciate that. It helps the show to grow, helps more people see it. And of course, if you guys are on YouTube, drop a like and subscribe if you're new as well. New podcasts coming out every single week. And as I always say, a lot of the stuff that I talk about on the show comes from your guys' questions. It's a way for me to be able to connect with you guys and be able to kind of elaborate on a lot of questions you guys might have, a lot of points that, are hard to make in shorter videos. I can kind of talk about in more of this long form format on a podcast. So again, I really do appreciate all the questions. If you guys do have questions for me, best place to reach me is on Instagram at Vision Driven Basketball. Go ahead and send me a message on there. Even if it's not a question, you just want to let me know what you think. If you guys have used my training, I got a couple messages this week from players who have just been using my workouts on YouTube and talking about the results that they've seen. So again, I always love to hear that. Without any of that anyway, just give me a follow on Instagram just so you guys see what I'm posting. Anytime I'm going live, any of that stuff, whether on YouTube or Instagram, go ahead and give me a follow just so you guys stay in the loop with all the things that are going on. So for today's podcast, September just started, which is still crazy to me. I feel like the summer went by really, really quickly. Really was a great summer. Shout out to all of you guys. Saw a lot of players get better over the summer. A lot of you guys put in a lot of work. And it was great to be able to see and hear about all the progress that I got to see from you guys. So that's awesome. And, obviously season's approaching. As school's starting to back up and all that stuff. So continue to approach your training with the same kind of intensity as it's been during the summer, because it's going to pay off for you if you can keep that momentum up going forward. And today's podcast is going to kind of add on to that. I think it's going to be very, very important in terms of your overall development. So, obviously, fall approaching. A lot of you guys probably started school. Depending on where you live, maybe school got pushed back. And various reasons, maybe school's online for you. I know a lot of players are dealing with that right now. Where I live, everyone's really back in person for the most part, but obviously it's a little bit different. Some places when it comes to sports have pushed sports back. Most places are playing right now in terms of football, soccer, all those fall sports are playing, which is good for basketball season, that things haven't gotten pushed back or gotten canceled or anything like that. And hopefully things continue to move in that direction with that trend. But regardless of all that, I kind of want to talk about what should the preseason look like, okay? Because obviously we've gone through our whole entire offseason, this whole entire summer, spring, and now we're at a point where, we're starting to get prepared for this season specifically. All the work that we do in spring, summer, fall is preparing us for the winter, okay? And the way that we prepare now over the next couple months is going to be a little bit different than how things have been going through, May, June, July, August, all those main off-season months. Now it's a little bit different because we're trying to get ourselves primed and ready to go for November when, we start to play and now we have to be at our highest level. So we're going to talk about how we can do that, how our training is going to change a little bit. And there's going to be a couple of little differences that we'll see between off-season and preseason. And we're going to talk about what exactly you can do to make sure that you get the most out of the preseason. You put yourself in the best position to be ready to go, when that first tip-off happens in November, December, whenever that might be for you guys. And, obviously, like I just said, there's different phases throughout the year, okay? So you're going to have your obviously in-season. That's again, the most important part of the year. When you're in the winter playing your in-season games, that's why we train, that's why we work out, so that we are ready to play at our best and have the best possible season when we get to the actual November, December, January, February, March, those months. That's what that's for, okay? And obviously, once that ends, typically around February, March, depending on how well you do or where you play, then we're typically going to jump into the offseason right from there. So we're going to go, usually March, April, May, June, July, August. Those are kind of your main offseason months, okay? And then, for some people, August, but usually September, October are going to be, that's your main preseason months. So we're getting prepared for November, and our training is going to change a little bit from that bulk offseason to those 8 to 12 weeks of preseason training right there, okay? And Some of you guys might see this with your actual team training as well. I know, it's a little bit different when you talk about high school versus college. A lot of times at the college level, again, it also depends on what level of college, but a lot of times you can have a lot more team stuff, and the stuff I'm going to talk about a lot of time will tie into itself. When you're in high school, typically a lot of the stuff you're going to do is going to be kind of on your own. A lot of the training isn't going to be very different until the season gets here. A lot of times you're going to have athletes who play multiple sports, so be missing your starting point guard because they're playing football, right? So you can't quite do all the things you might do at the college level because you're not going to have all your guys until the season gets here, okay? That's the case for some teams. But we're going to talk about what you can do personally to be prepared moving forward and getting into the actual important part of the year, which is the season. So there's a few key differences in how we should approach training between off season and the preseason, because your goals are a little bit different. All right, in the off season, we're gonna take, and my thought on it is we're gonna take between 3 and 4 skills, and we're gonna hit those heavy in the off season. Okay, so you're gonna say, I want to work on, we'll say, shooting, ball handling, finishing. That's 3 kind of broad things. Sometimes you might narrow it down a little bit. You might say, I want to work on my shooting off the dribble. You might say, I want to work on my ball control. But what we'll just say for the sake of this, your 3 skills you're going to work on overall: ball handling, shooting, finishing. So those will be the 3 things you're going to really, really target every single day when you're working out, or at least, obviously it might be structured differently throughout your program, whatever you're doing in the off season. But those are the 3 skills you're going to be hitting in those off season months. Okay, with the goal of by the time you get back to November, those skills are at a higher level. Okay, and so knowing that, right, we have those 3 or 4 skills. Sometimes those skills might be a weakness. We might be saying, I'm not a very good 3-point shooter. This offseason, I'm going to maybe make some changes on my shot. Maybe I need to get stronger, so I'm going to be in the weight room getting stronger. And my goal is to take that weakness, which was shooting, and turn that into a strength. Okay, that's something that you would do in the off season. That's something you might make that choice in March, April, May, and that's what your focus is going to be for the off season, because you have those months, you have the time to do that. And most importantly with the off season is there's not really the pressure of having to perform, right? If you're going to fix your shot, and it might make you a little bit inconsistent for a couple weeks or maybe a month while you're trying to change your form and get it, to be second nature, right? You might be a little bit inconsistent. You might get a little bit worse as a shooter overall before you start to get better at it, okay? But you have time for that, right? Even if you make a change to your form in April, and the whole month of April you shoot worse, but by the time you get to May, your shot is better, it's okay. It's okay to have a bad month, right? Because now you have May, June, July, August. So now you can continue to move forward with your new form. And that's just an example of that, okay? Your weakness might be ball control. Maybe you're not a very good ball handler. So, you're going through, April, May, really, really hammering home your ball handling. And by the time you get to, the main summer months, all of a sudden, maybe that's not a weakness for you anymore. Maybe you're a lot better at it, okay? That's something that we need to be able to focus on. All right, maybe you've taken that weakness and you turn it into something that's average now. Okay, it's not a strength yet, but it's decent. Okay, so you might also take a strength and make it more of a strength. Maybe your strength is shooting. Maybe you're already a really good shooter, but now you want to become a great shooter. So now you work on extending your range a little bit more. Now you work on being able to be more consistent coming off of pin downs. Coming off of, being able to shoot off of handoffs, being able to shoot off of ball screens, different shots that might be a little bit more difficult. Now all of a sudden, you're going to go from being a good shooter to a great shooter because that's your focus. Okay, so the off season, the whole entire intent of it, all that being said, is that we're trying to level up our game. We're going from strength to, or going from weakness to turn that into a strength. Or we're going from a strength and turning it into something that's really, really great, okay? That's our goal. We're trying to transform how we are as players, okay? And in general, that's kind of the format you're going to follow throughout your offseason, okay? And again, shout out to all of you guys who made those sort of transformations over these summer months. It really was, again, from my perspective, was great to see. And, we're going to continue to get into it, but, just to kind of to preface everything, preseason doesn't mean that we stop with that, right? You're still going to make improvements, and we still have months here to get better, right? But we're just going to make a little bit of a slight shift to how we approach the preseason now, Okay, we're still going to see those improvements, but now it's going to be in a couple different areas. And again, we're going to kind of narrow down what we're focused on. And so, what I mean by that is that, all of a sudden, so now we're in September, right? And it's important that we understand that we're probably not going to make those major skill overhauls right now. Okay, we're probably not going to be in a position to where we're going to be able to, take our shot, go from having a broken shot that never goes in to, by the time we get to November, we're great shooters. Okay, that's usually not the time for this, because really, but especially by the time you get to later preseason, you're pretty set on what you are for the year. Okay, you're pretty set. What you have is really what you are. By the time you get to October, really, that's really what you are. Okay, and what I mean by that is essentially that the skills that you have, that's going to be the role that you're going to be able to play this year. Okay, and so we need to understand that all of a sudden it comes from major skill overhauls to how can we prime ourselves? How can we get ourselves to be playing at our absolute peak by the time the season gets here, so that when the season gets here, and again, the important part of the year is here, we're at our highest level. We're playing at our highest level possible, and we're able to perform. And that's the goal of the preseason. Okay, so we need to get ourselves ready to go, and we're going to get our skills in a position to where we're ready to hit the ground running when practices start up and games start up. Okay, so what that means is that you're going to take a lot more focus on getting game shots. So we're going to talk a lot about your system, right? If you know the system you play in, so you know what, we're on a 5-out and a lot of driving kicks, so I'm going to get a lot of 3-point shots on the wing or in the corner off of driving kicks, okay? So a lot of what you're focused on is repping out those game shots you're going to get this season, okay? So you spend a lot of time working on those wing catch and shoot threes, those corner catch and shoot threes, those drift and lift catch and shoots. You work on your ability to be the guy who can drive and kick, being able to make good passes off the driving kick, being able to relocate after you make that pass. Those game looks you're going to be able to get. Maybe you run a continuity like flex offense. So I'm going to get a lot of shots, a lot of elbow curl jump shots, right? So you focus on a lot of those. Okay, maybe you run a 4-out where you get a lot of ball screens for yourself. Okay, so maybe you work on your ability to play off of ball screens, to make different reads off of ball screens, to hit shots coming off of ball screens. Maybe you work on your ability to, come off a ball screen, hit that pull up in the mid range. Maybe you work on your ability to hit that 3-point shot off of a ball screen. Maybe you work on your ability to snake the ball screen and hit that mid range shot. A bunch of different reads that you might see in the season, so that by the time the season gets here and now you got to run that offense, you've already been preparing for the past couple months to hit those shots, to be ready for those opportunities. That's where the difference. That's what the difference really is when it comes to off season versus preseason. Now we're a lot more focused on those exact shots. Now that's not to say that you aren't focused on those shots during the off season as well. If we run a lot of ball screens, well, you're probably going to focus a lot on ball screens during the off season. But you also might say, you know what, my ball handling is not great, so I got to work on that as well. Okay. Now your ball handling is hopefully at a respectable level, and now we really turn up the focus that we have on those specific situations you're going to find yourself in games. Okay, that's where it becomes most important. That's just one kind of minor switch that we're gonna see in the preseason. And so on top of that, we want to make sure that our skills are really primed and ready to go. Okay, so we're getting up a lot of shots, a lot of shots. I mean, assuming you're a shooter, right? Or you play in an offense where you need to be able to shoot the basketball. We're getting up a lot of shots in situations where we're going to be able to hit, okay? We're going to make sure that we feel really, really good about our shot going into the season. Same thing with your ball handling, right? We're going to make sure that our handles feel really, really good going into the season, okay? Especially, if you're a point guard and you have to be able to run an offense, set up an offense, get to different spots, right? There might be different plays that are drawn up for you to get different shots, maybe in the mid-range, coming off of different actions. How can we make sure that we're as prepared as possible to be at our best when those situations come? That's what the offseason is all about, or the preseason is all about when we're talking about focusing on where we are right now. Okay, because again, once we get to October, for the most part, you've got about a month, maybe some of you a little bit longer than that, but about a month out from the season, you really are what you are at that point. Okay, so now we just need to make sure that we can be our best. We can maximize the skills that we have right now. Okay. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. The work that we do, the work that we do in the off season, the work we do in the preseason, is supposed to lead us up to playing at our best when the season gets here, November, December, January, and then hopefully when the playoffs get here, February, March. Okay, those are the important parts that we have to be able to focus on. So everything that we do is priming us to be able to do that. Okay, and obviously that kind of relies on you knowing your system. Okay, so for you older guys and older high school, college guys, for the most part, you know your system, right? Especially if you played there for a year, or if you're going into college and you've seen where you're going to be playing at, you know your system. Okay, you kind of have an idea, talking to your coaches, watching film of what your role is going to be, what shots you're going to be expected to hit, what positions you're going to find yourself in. So you're able to kind of tailor what you do in the preseason to those different things. Okay, but obviously, if you're a younger player, you're in a new system that you're not sure of, then it's just really more of a generalized preparedness. Okay, so we're gonna focus on being able to relocate, drifting into the corner, catch and shoot three, lifting up to the wing, catch and shoot three. Different, those sort of shots that are very, very common in basketball that you're probably going to see in any system, and we're going to rep those out, okay? And then if you have an idea of, okay, well, I'm also going to get a lot of these looks, maybe you add that into your training so you really are prepared for those looks that you get, okay? And that can be your kind of main focus during the preseason is preparing yourself. But the second thing that's going to be a little bit different when we talk about offseason versus preseason is that the preseason, we're going to have more of a focus on what we're doing when it comes to conditioning, okay? Because when we're in the off season, a lot of times we're focused so much on building those skills, right? So we're working on our shot every single day. Maybe we're really overhauling our shot, so it's a lot of really fine-tuned skill work, okay? And a lot of hours working on our skills. All right, maybe we're working on different sorts of moves, and we really have to pay attention to the footwork that we're doing. So it's a lot of mental work, okay? Where we're building up those skills that we're going to need to be able to translate into games, okay? And that's again where we make those giant leaps when it comes to your abilities as a player. But a lot of times, because of that, there's just less focus on conditioning in general. And honestly, that's really how it always is, because you're not playing as much. You're not practicing every single day. Usually when it comes to team practices, where you're going to run sprints, you're going to play 5-on-5. You're probably going to play pickup fairly often, hopefully, but it's not going to be at a level where, it's going to keep you game ready. Okay, so now as a preseason is here, and we understand that in a couple months we're going to have to be able to run. We're going to have to be able to bounce back. We're going to have to be able to have, play back-to-back games, right? We're going to have to be able to play a game on a Friday night, and then Saturday afternoon we're going to have to be back in the gym to play another one. So are you prepared? Are you well conditioned enough to be able to do that? Okay? And by the way, you had three practices the days before. So you had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you had practices, you had 2-hour practices. Friday you had a game, Saturday afternoon you had another game. Okay? That's the type of grind that the season is. So now that we're approaching that, we've got to be able to be in shape, to be in game shape, okay, as opposed to just being, semi in shape. Now we got to be in game shape. And a lot of times your ability to hit those shots that you worked on the whole offseason is going to be determined on how well conditioned you are, because obviously once you get into games, you understand this. If you're tired, it's harder to hit shots, right? Because your legs are tired. It makes everything more difficult for you. But there's also this sort of long-term fatigue over the season where you're going to be more tired in February than you are in November, okay? Because you just, every single day, physically and mentally, it's been a grind where you're going to practice, you got games, film study, not to mention all the other stuff you probably have to do between school and all the other stuff that you have going on. It's just a generalized fatigue. So preparing yourself as much as you can in those months leading up to the season is going to help you long-term. So if you're the most well-conditioned player on the floor, everything just becomes easier for you, okay? It just becomes easier for you. There was in the book Toughness by Jay Billis, there was a story about, I'm blanking on their point guard's name, Tommy Amaker, and he was they did their preseason mile run. So essentially they were timed on the mile, and every position group had to be able to run the mile in a certain amount of time. So obviously the point guards really had to be able to run that mile the fastest. Okay, and Jay Billis, who wrote the book Toughness, talks about how he would go out and every day be like he would try and beat Tommy, but Tommy was at a point where Jay Billis would run his absolute hardest, and he felt like, oh man, I'm doing great, like I'm really pushing myself, and he'd be dead tired after he ran his mile, got his time, and he'd see Tommy, who would beat them by a lot, and it was kind of like, what is he doing differently than me? Why is he in such good shape? And Tommy's response basically was like, listen, every day when I'm practicing, like when I'm running my mile, like my goal is not to beat the time. My goal is I'm going to make myself as uncomfortable as possible for the time that I'm training. Okay? So I'm never running to a point where, I can comfortably make my time now. I have to make this mile in whatever, 5.5 minutes, 6 minutes, we'll say. Oh, I got it in 5:54 or 5:50, right? I got 10 seconds on there, so I can be kind of cool now. It's like, no, I got to push myself to maintain that same sort of intensity, and now that's why I'm running my mile 30 seconds faster than everybody else, because once they hit their time, they knew they were going to hit it, they eased up a little bit. But me, I kept that same level of intensity. So now when the games are here and everybody else is starting to get tired, I've been able to push myself at a higher intensity for longer, and that pays off down the line for you. So that sort of mentality shift of that's what it means to be in shape, right? To be in game shape. Like how uncomfortable are you able to be, and how long can you really last being uncomfortable like that, right? That's what I'm talking about. So we want to be able to get to a point where we're in shape, and there isn't anything that can really throw you off in games. The conditioning side of things is taken care of. All you have to focus on now is just going out and playing, right? The skill part, that's what you got to focus on, like being warmed up, getting into your spots, making sure your routines are on point, making sure that you know the plays, obviously. The conditioning part of it, you took care of that already. Okay, that's what we want to do during the preseason. Get that stuff out of the way, get it to a high level, so when the season's here, that's not even a concern for you. Okay, you already know what you can do with that. So when we talk about conditioning, my personal opinion is that the best way to be able to do this is playing. So you want to be able to probably ramp up the amount of times you're playing full court 5-on-5. So that might mean, okay, now I'm playing 3 or 4 times a week, 5-on-5 for an hour and a half, just trying to get my conditioning back up. And ideally, this is going to be good games, hopefully with your teammates if you can. But regardless of that, being able to get your conditioning through actual basketball, because obviously basketball shape is different than any other shape, right? You can run 10 miles a day, but it's a different type of conditioning when you have to go on a basketball court, play defense for 15 seconds, sprint down the floor for a layup, come back, play 15 more seconds of defense. Now you have a little bit of a break while the offense gets set up. Now you got to sprint off a screen. The type of conditioning that you do in basketball is a little bit different. Okay, so if we can mimic that through actually playing and being in those situations, it's just going to make everything a lot easier for you when the games actually get here. Okay, so that's really the point number one, is playing pickup as often as possible in these preseason months, so that you're, obviously skill-wise, it's good to play pickup. We always talk about that, how that's where you kind of develop your instincts. That's where you translate the work you've put in, one-on-one or one-on-0. That's where you translate it into actual competitive situations. But on top of that, that's where you build your conditioning up as well. Okay? So we can also supplement that with running. So we can say, maybe you had a team workout or an open gym, or maybe it was your own personal workout, and at the end of that workout, you run 3 17s, where you run across the court 17 times. So that's your conditioning to kind of end it. Okay? And maybe when you do that, you say, in between the 17, I got to make 2 free throws, or you want to do whatever. Again, just to kind of add to the conditioning that you're already doing. Okay? So that's something to think about. We want to have that pickup, but also we can supplement it with running. So we can run sprints at the end of practice. We can run sprints during your workouts, just to make things more difficult. Just make yourself a little bit more tired, so that, again, we build up that conditioning. We're ready to go when the season gets here, and we're tired. We had a game the night before. Our legs are still good to go. Okay, so that's what we can develop in the preseason as well. And then the third thing really to focus on is your team stuff. Okay, so the offseason a lot of times can be very individual focused, depending on, again, where you play your program. A lot of programs are very team oriented during the offseason, where everybody's in over the summer. And that's great. That's awesome. And obviously, at the college level, usually that's how it is. Again, depending on the level. Usually in the preseason, though, at the college level, everyone's in together, which is something to think about. But if that's not where you're at, then you want to try your best to be at the team stuff. Okay, so if you guys are having team workouts, you're having team open gyms, you're having team lifts, now's the time to be in to especially just be able to learn your system. A lot of times coaches can start to put stuff in during the preseason. So, now they have guys who they're comfortable with, that they've seen all offseason, all preseason, and they're able to kind of get a jump start on the season to go. And also, that's the same thing with you. You can have a better idea of what my role is, what I'm going to be expected to do, the shots I'm going to be able to hit, the defense I have to be able to play, all those things, and that can kind of tailor what you're doing in the preseason as well. Because again, you're going to be playing with that team. So if you can get in and get that stuff figured out early, it's going to pay dividends for you as well. Okay. And so those are really a few key things to focus on, those 3 things right there. So I want to give you guys a couple tips to focus on going forward, some actionable steps you can take to make sure that you maximize your preseason. Okay. Number 1, and it's kind of just a recap, but write down what skills you need to be the sharpest at when the season starts. Okay. And typically this is going to be based on what your role is, or it's going to be your strengths, right? So if you don't know what your role is because it's a new team or whatever it might be, you have to kind of judge what your strengths are, okay? So I'm a great catch and shoot player. I'm going to make sure my catch and shoot ability is at a high level by the time the season gets here, because that's what's going to get me on the court. I'm a great ball handler. I can run the point guard position well. I'm going to make sure that I'm ready to go. My conditioning is at a high level so that I can be up and down the floor, setting up the offense, playing defense, doing all the things that a point guard needs to be able to do. That's got to be something that you're focused on as well. Okay, so it kind of has to tie into what your strengths are. Maybe both those things are your strength. Maybe you're a point guard who also can catch and shoot. Okay, make sure those are at a high level when the season gets here. Okay, now again, that being said, that doesn't mean that we're going to completely get rid of the other things we're going to be doing, right? So, you might still be working on some of your weaknesses. That's fine. You might still be doing a lot of workouts that you were doing in the off season. Nothing has to change completely, but there should be some little changes in that focus. So the one thing you can do is recognize what my role is and how am I working to maximize my ability in this role coming up for this season. That's going to help you to be as successful as you possibly can when the season gets here, okay? And, number 2 is make sure that you're trying to play as much pickup, as much full court 5-on-5 as you can throughout the preseason, okay? And, a lot of teams are going to play in fall leagues, so just getting as much playing in as you can, because that's going to build your not only your conditioning, that's the main thing. It's going to build your conditioning, but also you're playing with your team. It's going to be building just that team chemistry, also your understanding of the offense, your role, all those things you need to be able to have to again, excel during the season. Everything, there's no downsides to that. So very, very important. Try and get in to play pickup, to play at least some sort of competitive 5-on-5, 2, 3, 4 times a week, ideally if you can. That way when the season gets here and you're playing 3 games a week with practices every day, you're prepared to do that. Your conditioning is there, all those things. And like I said, you can add in sprints to your workout. So if you have an individual workout one day, add some sprints in at the end right there. Add a couple 17s in there at the end just to kind of really push yourself at the end. Add a couple suicides throughout your workout so that, maybe you have a shooting drill coming up, but maybe you run a suicide first. That's just to make yourself a little bit more tired. Now you got to hit shots when you're tired. Okay, that's going to help, pay off down the line as well. And the third thing is, again, try to beat as much team stuff as you can, okay? Get in, understand the system so that when practices get here, you're ready to go. Like nothing's different for you. Now, the only thing at this point now is, it's official, okay? But if you can make sure that you've prepared yourself, you put yourself in a position to understand those things before the season even gets here, you're going to be in a good position by the time that, again, November, December, January, the most important time of the year is here, okay? So, again, overall, all the work that we do in the off season, in the preseason, is so that we can maximize our success in season, okay? So it's important that we take a look at what we actually can do to make sure that's the case, all right? And, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, and there's some constants that you're always going to see. But again, just taking those 3 things that I gave you at the end right there, applying them to what you're doing over the next couple months, you're really going to feel a very high level of confidence going into those early practices, those first couple games. You're going to feel very, very confident in the work that you've put in, and you're gonna see again, the worst thing you can have is feeling you put in a ton of work and then the season gets here and it's like you're trying to catch up to the speed or whatever. Take care of those things that you can take care of. Control you can control. You can control your conditioning. You can be the most well conditioned player on your team. That's something that you can do if you want to, right? So let's control those little things. You control showing up to team stuff if it's available, right? Make sure you do that if you can, okay? And then all the other things are going to take care of themselves, but take control of those things. And again, the confidence that you're going to be able to play with come those first couple practices, the first couple games is going to be really, really awesome. So again, I've loved the progress that I've seen from you guys so far this year. If you guys are interested in any sort of online training, that link is going to be in the bio in the description below. And for all my guys in the perimeter scorer system, we're in our preseason phase. Most of you, I'd assume all of you are in that by now because most of you guys are probably starting up in November or December. So we're 3 months out, at least 3 months out. So you guys are in there working and adding these kind of elements of conditioning into what you're doing. So really getting your skills maximized. So shout out to all of you guys. And like I said, guys, any questions for me? You have any questions about what I just talked about? Send me a DM on Instagram at Vision Your Basketball. You have any other questions, of course, send me a message as well. And while you're there, give me a follow. Like I said, podcast every single week. So if you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and scroll down, leave a review for me. YouTube, like, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.